ability to freeze rents. But I think you would have to look at the
Why isn't that a taking?
well, it certainly could be a taking. And I think,
When does it become a taking? At what point?
well, I think it would have to be, you'd have to initially look at the impact, the financial impact on the taking of
Okay.
what could amount to a
Let's
property.
suppose, that's fair, yes, sir. Let's suppose 40% of the landlords will default on their mortgage. Have you reached the point of a taking or not? And how do you determine when you reach the point of a taking?
Well, again, I think it could depend, but there would have to be a showing that, what the financial impact was. And I
Yes,
think
sir, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, we just have so little time. I understand that you have to have a showing. Tell me what the rule is.
Well, I think
Something
the
felt
rule is
off
if
in this hearing. And it wasn't just the questions, it was the answers. John Kennedy came ready to pin things down, but nominee Michael J. Hendershot, he kept slipping into that classic legal gray zone. And honestly, it raises a bigger question. Should judges ever speak clearly before they're confirmed?
When does the president have to get permission of the United States Congress to use military force?
Well, Senator Kennedy, as I was discussing with Ranking Member Durbin, I do want to be careful about hypotheticals in terms of prejudging.
It's not a
anything,
hypothetical. I'm asking what the Constitution says. When does the President of the United States have to get permission from Congress to use military force?
Generally, Senator, my understanding is the divisions between Article 1 and Article 2 distinguish between the war powers, which are under Article 1 and require congressional consent. Again, talking in great generalities, whereas other use of force, if I understand your question, are things that are likely committed under Article 2 to the President's commander-in-chief powers.
Welcome back to Liberty Reacts. If you want real, unfiltered political breakdowns, hit subscribe right now. This Senate Judiciary hearing is a perfect example of what frustrates people about Washington. You've got a senator asking straightforward constitutional questions and a nominee who refuses to give straightforward answers.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude. I just don't understand what you said. Let's suppose the mayor of a city. Strike that. Let's suppose the mayor of a city goes to his or her city council and gets a rule freezing rents. You with me?
yes, Senator.
Freezing all rents
Yes, Senator.
forever and a day. Let's make it even more interesting. Reducing rents by 20%, because housing is a problem, right? Cost of housing. Let's suppose that to try to help people with housing costs, the city, mayor and council, uses its police power under its state constitution as recognized by the federal constitution. So we're going to lower our rents by 20%. And as a result, because of the cost of insurance and electricity and that sort of thing, about half of the landlords in the city just saying, look, we're going to have to default on our mortgage. Constitutionally, can the city do that?
Well, Senator, I think it could depend. I do think the city could have some ability to freeze rents, but I think you would have to look at the
Why isn't that a taking?
well, it certainly could be a taking. And I think,
When does it become a taking? At what point?
well, I think it would have to be, you'd have to initially look at the impact, the financial impact on the taking of what could amount to a property.
Let's suppose, that's fair, yes, sir. Let's suppose 40% of the landlords will default on their mortgage. Have you reached the point of a taking or not? And how do you determine when you reach the point of a taking?
Well, again, I think it could depend, but there would have to be a showing that, what the financial impact was. And I
Yes,
think
sir, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude. We just have so little time. I understand that you have to have a showing. Tell me what the rule is.
Well, I think the rule is if you're taking property without, the government, I should say, taking property for a legitimate government purpose, I think you can only do that by compensating the owner of the property.
So
Generally-
any freeze on rent is a act of eminent domain? Is that
Well,
what you're saying?
not necessarily, Senator. I think in your hypothetical, you were, at least as I understood it, we're talking about a financial impact, not just freezing it at the moment, but then going on down the
Okay.
road.
In the hypothetical I gave you, who's going to win if the landlord sue the city or the landlords?
Well, I think, again, it would depend on the length.
You're not going to give me an answer, are you?
Well, I think it could depend. I know that's a very lawyerly answer, Senator. but I
Yes, sir, it
think-
is.
I
Very
think it
hard.
would depend on-
Judge, let me ask you a question in the few minutes I have. Tell me under what circumstances the state legislature can draft a statute that makes a distinction that classifies people on the basis of race.
Senator, I think, Chair Grasso, may I answer?
Yes, and then we'll go to Senator Coons.
Thank you, Senator. I think the circumstances would depend on the specifics of United States Supreme Court
I
case
know.
law and
Just give me
the
some
state
examples.
constitution.
Just give me
at
some
issue.
examples.
Senator, on the basis of race, I think in the United States Supreme Court has held that there should be no classification.
No, they just said you got to have a compelling reason.
That is true, Senator.
So tell me what would be a compelling reason.
Senator, as we sit here today, I cannot give you a compelling reason.
Okay, I appreciate your honesty.
Let's start with presidential war powers. Kennedy is basically asking, when does the president need Congress before using military force? That's not a trick question. That's literally the foundation of constitutional checks and balances. But instead of a clear line, Hendershot leans on the classic Article 1 versus Article 2 explanation. Here's the issue. That answer is technically correct, but practically useless. Americans don't need a lecture, they need clarity. If you're going to be a federal judge, at some point you should be able to say, here's where the line is likely drawn. Kennedy's frustration, honestly, it makes sense here. Segment 2, Rent Control and Takings. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Kennedy creates a hypothetical. A city forces rent down by 20%. Landlords start defaulting. Is that a constitutional taking? And again, Hendershot says, it depends. Look, legally, yes, these cases often depend on specifics. That's true. But here's the critique. If everything depends, then what guidance are judges actually giving? The Constitution isn't supposed to feel like a guessing game. What viewers are seeing here is the tension between legal precision and public accountability. And right now, it feels like precision is being used